Okay, Caleb, it's Sarah again, and we're going to talk about the other homework you had, our practice problems with fractions. So we have 1/2 plus 1/4. So you got to think, if you have a half of something, like, I don't know, like I had a banana this morning. So if I have a half a banana, and then I take a fourth of the banana, and I eat a half a banana, and then I eat a fourth of banana, how much of the banana did I eat? So you can think about it that way. So sometimes just think about it logically, but sometimes when you look at fractions, it's a little bit intimidating. No, fractions are just numbers. They're just numbers. I mean, as a decimal, this is 0.5, and this is 0.25. So you have 50 cents plus 25 cents. How many cents do you have? But relating it to fractions is helpful. So let's take a look. So if you're adding, the key for adding fractions is you have to have the same denominator, because this denominator tells you how many parts. And in order to add things or subtract things, you have to have the same amount of parts. So this one I have 2, and this one I have 4. So I don't have the same amount of parts, but I can get it to the same amount of parts. So I have 2 here, so, and I have 4 here. So I would look at the bigger number and see if the smaller number can go in the bigger number. Can 2 go into 4 evenly? And it can. So what that means is I can find a number that I multiply 2 by to get to 4. So 2 times what will give me 4? And that is 2. So what we do at the bottom, the denominator, we have to do the top, the numerator. Just like with the decimals when we carried it. If we carried it 2 times on one side, we have to carry it 2 times on the other side. So for this one, if we multiply the bottom by 2, we have to multiply the top by 2. And it's not 2 because this is 2. It's 2 because 2 times 2 gives me 4, and I want to get 4. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Now we don't have to do anything to this fraction because now we have the same parts. Now take a look at 2/4. 2/4 is the same as 1/2. It's just not reduced down. It's not simplified. And that's what we're trying to do here, is they're called equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions, which really just means equal fractions. We want to get fractions that are equal to each other, because we don't want to, again, change the problem, like how many. We just want to change the way it looks so it's easier for us to handle. So you're going to notice that in math a lot is like you don't want to change how much is there, like how much numbers are there. You just want to change the way it looks so it's easier for you to handle. So 1/2 is equal to 2/4. And that's good. I want that. I don't want to change this number too much. So once we have, let me rewrite it so it's a little cleaner here. 2/4 or 1/2 plus 1/4. Once you have the same parts, keep that part. You're going to keep that. So that's the whole point of adding or subtracting fractions. You have to have the same amount of parts in order to add them or subtract them correctly. Once you have the same amount of parts, you keep the parts at the bottom because that's all going to be the same. And then you add the top. So we have 2 of the 4 parts plus 1 of the 4 parts equals, we have 3 of the 4 parts. So we have 3/4 total. And if you can reduce that, I would. This one's odd and this number's even. So always try to divide by 3 if that's the case, but those can't be reduced anymore. So my answer is 3/4. Now you didn't have to use 2/4. I do want to show you that there's many fractions you can use. For example, there's not just one denominator it could be. So like, let's say, another way I've seen students do it is they multiply these two numbers together. So 2 times 4 is 8. So they were trying to think, okay, what can the fraction be where the parts are 8? So this one, 2 times what gives me 8? And that's 4. But what I multiply the bottom, I have to multiply the top to make sure we get equivalent fractions. So that means 4/8 is the same as 1/2, which it is, because if I divide 4 by 4, I get 1. 8 by 4, I get 2. So these are equivalent fractions, and that's good. So here we have 4. I want to get 8 parts. So 4 times what gives me 8? And that's 2. So what I multiply the bottom, I have to multiply the top. So 4 times 2 is 8. So that's where that 8 came from. 1 times 2 is 2. So what that means is 2/8 is equivalent or is equal to 1/4. And that's good. That's what I want. I don't want to do different amount of fractions. I'm going to change the way they look so they're easier for us to handle. So we have the same amount of parts. We're going to keep those parts. And then we're going to add the top. So 4 plus 2, because I have 4 of the 8 plus 2 of the 8 parts. So I have a total of 6 of the 8 parts. Now this one, they're both even. So what number can they be divided by if they're both even? They can be divided by 2. And again, I'm not changing how much is there. I'm just changing the way it looks so it's a little more simplified. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 3/4. Now, it's not magic that this answer we got 3/4 and this answer we got 3/4. They should be the same. It's just we did the problem in 2 different ways. This one we only changed the 1 fraction. See, we only changed the 1/2. We kept the 1/4. We just didn't have to reduce here, which is fine. This one we changed both of the fractions to get different denominator, or the same denominator, and we just had to reduce it down at the end. So it doesn't matter on there. So don't think there's one common denominator. There has to be. There is just one that's easier in the sense of you have one less step. You don't have to reduce it down if you get the smallest common denominator. But if you don't happen to get the smallest common denominator, you still are fine. You just reduce it down in the end. So let's try another one. Move this so you can see it. So we have 1/2 plus 3/8. So this has 2 parts and this has 8 parts. I need the same amount of parts. So you could do 2 times 8 and get 16 parts. I would take your bigger number and see if 2 can go into 8 evenly. Can 2 go into 8 evenly? It can. So that means 2 times some number gives you 8. And what is that? That is 4. So I multiply the bottom, I have to multiply the top. So that means 2 times 4, the denominator, I have 8. 1 times 4, I have 4. So again, 1/2 and 4/8 are equivalent fractions. They're not the quantity or like how much is there. It's still 1/2. We just make it look a little different for us to handle. Now this one already has 8 as our parts of how many total parts we have. So we don't have to multiply anything. Some people will multiply by 1. But when you multiply anything by 1, you still get that number you multiplied by. So you can just keep that the same. So once you have the same amount of parts, you keep those parts and then you add the numerators, because this is how many of those parts do you have. So I have 4 of the 8 and I have 3 of the 8 that I'm going to add together. So if I have 4 plus 3, I have 7 of the 8 total. I have an odd and an even. 3 can't go into those evenly, so I know that that's reduced all the way. All right, one more. And if you want to pause the video and you try number 3, try that. That might be helpful too, because it's how you build your confidence in that. So this one is 2 and 3. So 3 is a bigger number, 2 can't go into 3 evenly, so that doesn't work with like 1 and 2. So for this one, I would suggest multiplying these together. If you multiply 2 times 3, you get 6. So that means 2 can go into 6 evenly and 3 can go into 6 evenly, which then means you can get equal parts. So 2 times what gives me 6? And that's 3. So what I multiply the bottom, I have to multiply the top. 3 times what gives me 6? And that is 2. So what do I multiply the bottom? I have to multiply the top. So what do I multiply in the denominator? I have to multiply in the numerator. So that means our bottoms, or our parts, are 6. We got that from 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 2 is 6. And then we did 1 times 3, so we got 3. So 3/6 is the same as 1/2, which it is. And we did 3 times 2 to get 6, 1 times 2 to get 2. So 2/6 is the same as 1/3. So now that we have the same parts, we keep the parts. That's the whole point of doing that before you can start an adding or subtracting problems. You gotta get the same parts. And you have 3 of the 6 plus 2 of the 6, so you have a total of 5 of the 6. So 3 plus 2. There. Now, 6 isn't the only option. You could do 12. 2 can go into 12 evenly, and 3 can go into 12 evenly. You could do 24. 2 goes into 24 evenly, and 3 goes into 24 evenly. There are lots of numbers you could choose. It's just if you choose a higher number, you would just have to reduce it more at the end, which is fine. This one is 5, 6. There's no number that can go into both of those, so that's my simplified. If you did 12, you would just reduce it, and once you reduce it, you would have gotten 5, 6. Hopefully this helps. I miss you guys. Okay, bye.